This lesson is on roots, so we're going to be talking about square roots and cube roots. First, for vocab, the only thing we really need to know is that this green symbol right here is called a radical sign. The radical sign tells you to square root a number or to cube root a number. Square roots are the first thing we're going to talk about. The opposite of squaring a number would be square rooting the number. Also, a square root is one of its two equal factors. So when you think of square root, you can think of a square. So the square root of 4 would look like this. We would have 4 dots here, and there are 2 in each row, 2 in each column. For 9, we would have 3 in each row, 3 in each column, a square. 16, 4 in each row, 4 in each column. So when we think of square root, we can actually think of a square. So the square root of 4 would equal 2 because there's 2 in each row, 2 in each column. The square root of 9 would equal 3 because there's 3 in each row and 3 in each column. The square root of 16 would equal 4. There's 4 in each row and 4 in each column. Something important to know about square rooting is that every positive number has both a positive and a negative square root, because 3 times 3 is equal to negative 3 times negative 3. So 2 positive numbers multiplied together or 2 negative numbers multiplied together will still get you a positive answer. So for some, you might see this plus or minus sign. For the first one, we're not using the plus or minus sign, it's just the square root of 64. So the square root of 64, we have to think what number times what number is equal to 64. Well, 8 times 8 is 64, which is the square root of 64 is 8. For the second one, we've got that plus or minus. So that means positive or negative number, either one would be our answer here. So the square root of 121 would be 11, and that'd be positive or negative 11, because 11 times 11 is 121. Also, negative 11 times negative 11 is 121. So either of those answers would be correct. For the third one, we've got a fraction, 25 over 36, and we're square rooting it. What we can think of is just square rooting the numerator, square rooting the denominator. Square root of 25 is 5, because 5 times 5 equals 25. The square root of 36 is 6, because 6 times 6 equals 36. So our answer would be 5/6. For the last one, I have the square root of negative 16. So we have to think what number times what number equals negative 16. Well, I know 4. 4 times 4 is positive 16. So that cannot work for this problem here. Okay? But what about negative 4 times negative 4? Well, that also equals positive 16. I can't think of any other number that would equal it, because when we've got a negative on the inside of that radical sign, the correct answer would be no real number, because there is no number times itself that will get you negative 16. So any square root that has a negative on the inside will always be no real number. When solving an equation that has a variable being squared, we can square root both sides. When we square root both sides, the square root and the square cancel out. All we're left with is t. Now, because we don't know what t is, we always have to have a plus or a minus outside of our square root. So t equals plus or minus square root of 169. Well, the square root of 169 would be 13, but it could be positive 13 or negative 13. That is always going to be the case when we're square rooting a number in an equation. Now we're moving on to cube root. The opposite of cubing a number is cube rooting that number. A cube root of a number is one of 3 equal factors. So instead of 2 factors like square rooting, there's going to be 3. Now, when we think of a cube root, we should think of an actual cube, a 3D figure. So the first one here, cube root of 125. Cube root's written with the radical sign, and it has the 3 here, this tiny 3. That means cube root. So when we look at our cube, our picture here, we need to look at how many are in each row, column, and across. So there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in each column. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in each row. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 across. So the cube root of 125 is 5. Cube rooting means 5 times 5 times 5, which would equal 125. Same for the next one. We're looking at the cube root of 27. So to find the cube root of 27, we think of a cube that has 27 blocks inside of it. How many are in each row, each column, and across? So we count. There's 1, 2, 3 in each column, 1, 2, 3 in each row, and 1, 2, 3 across. So the cube root of 27 would be 3, because 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. So to look at a few example problems, we've got the cube root of 125. The cube root of 125, so what number multiplied 3 times will equal 125? Well, for the first one here, that would be 5 times 5 times 5, which equals 125. So the cube root of 125 is 5. The cube root of negative 27. Well, we have to think what number times itself 3 times would equal negative 27. So let's see. Negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3. Negative 3 times negative 3 would be positive 9 here, times a negative 3 would be negative 27, which is what our original problem was. So the answer to the cube root of negative 27 is negative 3. For the last one, we're solving an equation. S cubed is equal to 8. Same thing as squaring. The opposite of cubing something is cube rooting it. So you're going to cube root both sides. The cubed and the cubed root cancel out. So all we're left with is S, and the cube root of 8 is 2. Work on these 6 practice problems in your notebook. Make sure they're on the left-hand side.